Welcome to another edition of Virginia Farm Bureau's WIP Wednesday, our weekly video update on the draft Watershed Implementation Plan, or WIP, as it is for short. This week we're in a special location, and here's Martha Moore to tell you more about why.
Ben, we're standing in front of the Caterpillar equipment that you can get with your Farm Bureau discount. And it's kind of ironic that we're talking about yellow issues that we're concerned about. Like on your farm, you got to have the right equipment to do the right job. Another benefit is farmers need us representing them, which is also part of your benefits. Getting to the point of the yellow issues within the WIP, we've tried to divide them down into categories. The first category is fairness and ability to utilize cost share. One of the recommendations is to direct 70% of cost share funding for the Chesapeake Bay. This really becomes an issue of fairness because prior to this year, the money had been split 60% to the Bay, 40% to other parts of the state, and that's consistent with the percentage of land mass. And this is a statewide program, so we want to make sure that we keep that fairness within the program. Also, they would like to direct increased cost share funding to 8 particular soil and water conservation districts. While on the surface, that seems like a great idea. Our concern is that are we going to have enough technical assistance to be able to allow these districts to get this extra dollars on the ground? We don't want to set those farmers up for failure and have someone draw the conclusion that because they couldn't get all the dollars on the ground, therefore we have to go to mandates. Ben, wasn't there some issues about questionable data? What were those?
Yeah, several issues. First one is related to poultry litter transport. Over the past year, Virginia Farm Bureau worked with the poultry industry to question a DEQ report on the amount of poultry litter that's properly used in the Bay watershed. Their inspectors were releasing this data on a delay, which allowed their numbers to be greatly underreported in the Bay model. Because of this, DEQ has increased the amount of poultry litter to be utilized and transported from 6,000 tons to 89,000 tons. If they're going to increase it by that amount, we need the data to back up why. Another issue is related to revised nutrient management plans and standards for soil health. Soil health is something that we all want and we all strive for, but currently local, state, and federal agencies all have standards for soil health. If the state is going to include a soil health standard in the state nutrient management plan, we need to make sure it conforms with what farmers are already doing at the federal level. Another issue also related to nutrient management plans is voluntary release of data. Farmers are voluntarily putting in tons of best management practices such as cover crops, no-till, and stream fencing, and since they're paying for these with their own funds, that data isn't being collected through the cost share program. If DEQ and others want to collect that data, we need to make sure that farmers' privacy and their personal information is protected when that's shared with other agencies. And lastly, I want to talk very quickly about equine incentives. Farm Bureau currently sits on a Best Management Practices Technical Advisory Committee that's working on a program to roll out the Ag Cost Share Program to commercial equine operations. We want to make sure it doesn't happen is that small backyard or residential operations aren't receiving these funds, because if so, that sets a precedent for other homeowner or recreational lands to receive cost share. And with limited resources, we need to be sure we're using those on the farm first. Martha, I think there are several other issues that we wanted to talk about.
Yes, so some of the recommendations are really changing programs' emphasis. They want to have the Ag Stewardship Program be part of verification of voluntary practices. And really the program wasn't set up for that. It was set up for those investigators to come out, look at one particular part of a complaint and deal with that, not to do a whole farm survey. So we're concerned about that full farm audit. Also, they want to finalize the carbon trading regulations and participate in what's called RGGI, or the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative. Our challenge with this particular recommendation is, what is this going to do to the energy costs, which are already very exorbitant for farming operations? Our final set of categories is items warrant clarifying questions, which means that these aren't issues that we may end up opposing, but we have a lot more questions to ask, like the Forestry Healthy Watersheds Initiative. We've been actively engaged in that process. In fact, it's being piloted in 2 counties with Orange and Essex. and those county farm bureaus are very well aware and engaged in that discussion. But we want to be careful that that program doesn't create uncertainty or another pressure for farmers trying to seek leased land. We also want to question whether preparing state lands watershed implementation plans doesn't have an impact on the research that farmers rely on at our land-grant universities. So we have to raise the question. And then finally, there's a program through the Department of Game and Inland Fisheries that deals with wildlife habitat. We're not exactly sure what would be changing with regards to them providing technical assistance to landowners and grants, and what types of criteria would be attached to that. So a lot more questions needs to be asked with regards to that. The final thing is the Coastal Resilience Master Plan. The governor has an executive order to create the Coastal Resilience Master Plan. And again, the devil's in the details. We just don't know what implications that's going to be for our farmers living in the coastal regions of the state. We have a meeting set up with DEQ later in May, and we're going to ask a lot of these questions that we are concerned about. It might influence our final comments, but these are things that we need to bring up. So we appreciate Caterpillar allowing us to come out here today. Please utilize your Farm Bureau benefits, and we hope you'll join us next week for our WIP Wednesday update.